In the name of God, the most benevolent and the most merciful, in honor of the original unconditional moment that all conditional moments have arisen from and will return to, in the presence of the systematic of this existential system and the world host beyond the world. Today, before deciding to give this lecture, I was driving, and I am someone who's attentive and sensitive to his inner realms. I can tell what rhythms are from me or managed by me and what rhythms are not. And so when I was driving to, I don't know how, it was equivalent to like a snap response. It was like a sentence that the moment I finished doing the thought in the inner realms, it appeared right after. And I was thinking about, like, my whole thing, my whole identity is really, to some degree, a major part of it is to win in the game, to win on a species level game. Anyways, I hear this sentence: when you can't honor yourself, how can you honor the species? And I wept, but granted, it was for a short time, but there were tears because it was like two realms, two views were intersecting. And it was as if I could see a life that I just purely lived for myself. I guess this happens when a person gets older. You get to see, I guess, the lives you could have lived. But it occurred to me that in what way, like it's a conundrum for me. There's a dilemma here. From one angle, I can see that a person can honor the species even if they don't honor themselves. For example, Christ was not a warrior in the outer realms, meaning he did not go like punch people in the face. He allowed himself to get crucified. In other words, guys, today, I guess it's more of an episode for me. I guess there are emotions that want to speak. The way I see my moments, which others don't have access to. I see it that there was a common life and there is an uncommon life. And if I lived the common life, all right, let me analyze this properly. I pretty much today, this sentence came to me, this question, and it was heavy. When you can't honor yourself, how can you honor your species? It's a very important question, and it's in some sense double-edged its validity. In other words, if a person cannot take care of himself, what's up, guys? Welcome. You know, you might think in this episode I'm having an existential crisis, but it's not one of those. I know that emotions. It's pretty much, I guess, I feel a bit of anguish and apathy for a version of myself that could have lived a different life. You know, I wasn't born at a time when there were kings and knights and, like samurai level honor. The honor most human beings have is they honor their family, they honor their family's beliefs, they honor their community and all of this. Let me tell you why I'm struggling with this episode, because I have to give an answer to something. Yo, sorry guys, the microphone wasn't on. What are you guys listening to? Oh my god, somebody tell me. Okay, I fixed the microphone now. Actually, give it a second. That's the show. Sorry guys, I should have checked this before. It's not showing. Hold on. I have the DGI. I'm connecting it. I don't know why it's not showing. This is frustrating. Hold on. All right, guys. I guess. Hold on. There will come a day where I will be like, probably like talking in front of a whiteboard. I do not understand why this is. Why. Okay. All right, guys. This should be a way better microphone. The audio quality should be much better. Um, all right. In this lecture, I am conflicted. I am conflicted because I can see two modes of validity to the question. How can someone, honor their species when they don't honor themselves? We are no strangers to the concept of sacrifice. You know, that means Prophet Christ, peace be upon him, while being crucified, looked at God and said, "Forgive them, for they do not know what they do." On some level, I have a deep view on this. I guess religion kind of comes into it. If I am the creation of the higher power and I live to honor the higher power, and I do not honor the creation of the higher power, then it's as if I have not honored the higher power. This is one view. From another view, a person can serve a system even though the system may not serve them. How many people in human history have served kingdoms? They have served so many different purposes, yet this purpose they served did not see them. How many hidden scribes and scholars are there in humanity that they might have taken chunks of their life for a collective purpose? You know, when the question came into my mind, when you can't honor yourself, how can you honor others? How can you honor the species? All right, guys, let me find a less depressing song. I don't know if you guys can hear it. Oh, it's been a while since I've heard this. From one view, a human being may make decisions that dishonor them, but it may dishonor them at a certain time. That means if I live for the species, I cannot live for both of them, for both me and the species, because the values are different, the conditions are different. And really, I'm starting to realize that human beings, I say it in these lectures, we're in like this conditional reality. Everything is in conditions. We adapt to conditions, but now I'm starting to see that we are like a life force and we direct this life force somewhere. Now, if a person is alone on an island, I guess serving themselves, if they're the last person on earth or the first person on earth, I mean, not possible first person on earth, but anyways, whatever. Let's say if you were the last person on earth, serving yourself would be serving others, would be like serving the species. But we're living at a time where human beings are faced with collective external problems and personal internal problems, individual internal problems. This might be a boring lecture, folks. I understand if viewers want to leave. I'm trying to figure something out here. From one angle, I can see it be true. If I don't honor myself, and imagine I manage to advance or help everybody on the planet, but I didn't help myself. It's as if I didn't help everybody on the planet then. And a part of me thinks like, yo, man, what is the contribution? If I just live in my own world, just adjust everything to my own reality, in some sense, yeah, things could be simpler. I could feel like a narcissistic king. Do you know? I could shut down any, let's say, anti views to my view. But where does that get me? It's about, of course, consciousness. Look, what is the human experience? It's like in the presence of an unknown instantaneous moment of awareness, you're experiencing a human form, aside from as also in addition to subtleties of subjective representations of that form. So in other words, our eyes open, we see an objective model. Okay, the brain's like, oh my god, is this a world? And then turns that into a subjective model, right? We live through that subjective model, right? And here's the fascinating thing, that I guess the answer to this question, to this problem, I can see it now, that in some sense, when if I don't honor myself, how can I honor the species? Imagine. So the only way is if I am the species. That's the only way. I am honoring myself, my greater self, at the cost of my lesser self. Do you know? So technically, oh, let's say, here, I'll give you a real example. Imagine me, like every other person, like a normal person, going about the day, and suddenly it's like I am, and there's an interaction. Something finds me in the moment, and then I zoom in on something, and I suddenly see the depth behind it, and then I realize, okay, this is not the common depth you see, and I'm like, okay, go give a lecture on it. Do you know? And it's like suddenly chunks of my day are taken for a different life. It's a privilege, I understand. It's not something I'm complaining about, but it's like couple hours throughout my life, throughout the day, I identify on a species level, and everything makes sense that way. Anyways, folks, I've provided a research component because this is a deep topic for me. I'm going to read the research component I asked AI, ChatGPT 5.4. This is what AI says. I said, when you can't honor yourself, how can you honor the species? And then I asked it to give me an academic view, an advanced view, and all the arguments and different kinds of reasoning. So AI says, from an academic perspective, so this is the research component, folks. From an academic perspective, the statement suggests that ethical life begins at the level of the self and extends outward into wider human obligations. In moral philosophy, psychology, and social theory, the individual is often understood as the first site where values are practiced rather than merely declared. To honor oneself does not mean vanity or narcissism. It means recognizing one's own dignity, regulating one's conduct, acting with integrity, and refusing forms of self-degradation that weaken moral agency. If a person cannot sustain honesty toward themselves, responsibility for their own actions, or basic self-respect, then their relationship to larger collectives such as family, society, or the human species becomes unstable. This is very true. It says the reasoning is that one cannot reliably protect what one does not already know how to recognize in oneself. A person who has not learned to treat their own mind, body, conscience, and potential as worthy may speak about humanity in abstract terms, but their commitment to human flourishing may remain shallow, performative, or contradictory. In this sense, honoring the species begins with the disciplined formation of a self capable of recognizing value both inwardly and outwardly. Yeah, it's saying like, It's pretty much saying, like, if you don't know how to tie your own shoes, how are you going to go tie the shoes of the species, right? I understand this, but there is no perfection one can attain. That means there is no set standard of, okay, am I ready now to serve? It's like the service to the human species begins the moment you recognize it, really. That means what is the greater context of purpose? Like, just think about it. What are the contexts of purpose on earth? The person's like, I'm doing something for me. The purpose is me. And then somebody's like, all right, man, I'm a good guy. The purpose is others. And then somebody's like, I'm a great guy. The purpose is the future generations. It's the species, the legacy of the species. It's a context of purpose. It's about what we serve. We human beings have been conditioned to want service. We complain about customer service. We like, if you go really spiritual, you're like, why isn't the divine serving me? Why isn't everything working out? You know. Anyways, let's keep reading. Let's go to the advanced view. At the most advanced level, the question points to a deeper principle. The human species is not honored only through slogans, collective identities, or moral language. It is honored through the refinement of the human unit. Each person is a local expression of the species. Your nervous system, your conscience, your attention, your discipline, your courage, your truthfulness, and your ability to resist corruption are not merely private matters. They are the condition of the species becoming conscious through you. If you betray yourself, fragment yourself, lie to yourself, addict yourself, humiliate yourself, or refuse your own higher nature, then you weaken one active node of humanity. And if millions do this, the species becomes a civilization of damaged carriers. To honor the species, then, is not first to wave the flag of humanity, but to become a worthy vessel of it. Self honor is the first proof that human worth has become real in matter. Without that, talk of serving humanity easily becomes compensation, disguise, tribal theater, or moral fantasy. The species rises only through humans who can bear its dignity in their own being. What a sentence! What a sentence. The species rises only through humans who can bear its dignity in their own being. This is definitely a deeper view. It's saying that in the same time you think that you're like failing as an individual or you're not honoring yourself, it's like you are part of this bigger system of this bigger human system, and in some sense it's funny because if we have, I guess this kind of sets this kind of clarifies it. If we have an influence beyond ourselves, then what happens to us, whether honorable is or dishonorable, isn't an honor and dishonor just for us. Do you know? That means Christ was crucified. Do you know that's a like crucifixion is like an evil act. Okay. Do you know? But to see a being be able to take the impurest moments of human psyche. And you know what the most average human psyche would do? The rebellious ego would do. He was like, man, it's making me emotional because I visually think if somebody was crucified, they'd be like, yo, man, all of you, burn and die, F you. Do you know what I mean? It would be some massive, like, resistance. But it was as if Christ, and there's various figures in history, not just prophets even, but Christ knew that the moment was happening due to the system admin's will, not the human will.
That means, it's funny, as this Muslim futurist trying to give 10,000 talks, Christ is like a role model for me, in the sense that, okay, man, 10,000 talks, like that's going to take a lot chunk of your life, but it's like, hey, which suffering is worse? The suffering of living alone successfully, but alone in my own, in a world I only could see. That means it's a cost. I think this is where human psychology is heading, where we're realizing, it's there's a cost. Like, just like they say, the cost of a new life is your old life. The cost of the new life of the species is the old life of the species. And the old life of the species was like, what am I gonna do? It's legit like an army, and every day soldiers are dying, and new soldiers are arriving. It's a human movement. It's legit, we're part of the human army. To me, I am someone who, since my youth, loved the concept of strategy, loved the idea of general and army and battle, loved the game theory that came with, circumstances where victory was possible. But like a video game, living with the ego is easy mode. The merit is different when you complete a game on easy mode, you know? It's like other souls are like, yo, man, I could have done that. But then there's some souls here on earth playing it on like medium mode. Some people are playing it on hard mode. Some beings are here to just, I don't know, I guess like beta testers or something like that. They're here to kind of like advance the system. I, it's not like I haven't had desires for other archetypal senses of being, you know, everything I've read, every archetype I've noticed, every person, pretty much my approach to knowledge was like, yo, man, we're on earth, and all of human history and knowledge is just what people have seen. So if I can understand how sight works, I can understand how knowledge was formed. Can you guys hear the music in the back? I haven't put as much effort in myself as I have, to some degree, put into these talks. It's like my standard of living readjusted to the archetype that I valued the most. Guys, the viewers don't know this. I'm going to go on a tangent here. I'm going to say something. In 2016, I visited Iran, and I'm someone who's not married and intends to, God willing. And I remember in 2016, I was in the kitchen of our house in Iran, my parents' house in Iran. And I had an asthma attack. There was nobody home. I fall down on the tile floors of the kitchen, and there's nobody there. I can't, like, I kind of can't move. I'm just like panting. And I remember there were two souls. I don't know how to tell you. I'm not clairvoyant. I'm someone who I know when the moment knows. I can tell what the moment knows. That means not everything that happens is based on the human brain and free will. Sometimes the moment already knows how to happen, or there's something there in the moment. So I was there with my back on the tiles of the kitchen floor, alone in our apartment in Iran, and just like what do you call it? The asthma attack hit, and I remember right above me. So I'm like, my back is on the kitchen floor. I see, I don't know how to tell you. I just know their presence of two beings. And this is going to sound strange. This might be one of the craziest things I've ever said. I knew those two souls were my children. I don't know how to explain it to you. I feel I have met the souls of the children I will have here. Do you know? And it was such an intense moment. The moment settles down, my attention shifts, it calms down. And it's like a part of me, it's strange. I don't know how to tell you. To us, we don't access the future, we're not there. But from another angle of this whole world room, it's all already there. Every thought we've ever have, it's there. The thoughts are traveling into the location. We are antennas. We receive and interpret different signals. Okay. And some signals, let's say they're more stationary, some signals are intelligent, they move. Like, you might not believe it, how with just a little bit of stillness and silence, like you suddenly can notice the different content of your inner realms. You know, I am not ignorant of death. I know that there will come a moment where the simplicity that we take for granted of how we can engage life and do things, it's like that access will not be there. Right now, when you see something happen on earth, you can do something about it. You might not feel like it, but you can do something about it. But what I would say in, let's say, other planes or in Bordeaux, perhaps, even though it's in the jurisdiction of the unseen, of course, and only the system admin knows the unseen. But I'm saying that it's like I've had uh, like actual deaths in my dreams, like actual dreams, and in all those moments, it's as if it's equivalent to a hand trying to reach a world, but it's slowly moving back. So, in other words, we have an access to engage experientially in existence that we take this so for granted because we are so zoomed in on the ideas, on the meaning of life. Do you know? It's as if the world was, if everybody was a philosopher, did you know that civilization wouldn't exist? Somebody's like, yo, man, what if I put this brick here and build a house? And somebody's like, yo, man, what if that house breaks? And then somebody's like, yo, man, what if like, you can't place the bricks properly? What if you place one brick wrong? Do you know what I mean? The thing about philosophy is more like it's the oldest branch of knowledge, by the way. It's the tree trunk of knowledge. And philosophy is pretty much beings looking at the reality from different angles. All of knowledge is that. And a knowledgeable person is somebody who can discriminate, who can organize what they see. And a wise person is a person who knows when to apply what. That's wisdom. In the outer realms, it's honestly a film set. Who are we kidding? It's a film set. It's not directed by us. We're actors for, like, we work like 16-hour acting shifts. Some people method act and they forget that there's depth to them as a being. And some people, they're conscious, they're acting. I've really taken moments of my life and I don't know, given it to this purpose. The amount of like relationships and social moments I've exchanged just to immortalize my voice in cyberspace with the hope of it making everything efficient. Who knows? At some point, you cry and then you laugh. You know, you cry for all the things that could have been, and then you laugh at why they didn't happen. All right, guys, I need a break. I'll be back. I'll be back in like 5, 10 minutes. Probably 5 minutes. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. The intermission took a while. Okay. All right, guys. There's a very important conclusion to this. I was reading the research component. Very important. I read this through. Pay attention. I read the advanced view. The last sentence was the species rises only through humans who can bear its dignity in their own being. Core arguments and reasoning. One, you cannot recognize human dignity outwardly if you do not recognize it inwardly. The first argument is about recognition. If you do not experience yourself as possessing worth, then your understanding of the worth of others may remain intellectual rather than lived. You may repeat that humans matter, but you have not learned what mattering feels like at the level of direct existence. Now, there's counter arguments to these, but it's not like a person can go get every person's experience to be able to, like, relate and understand. It's like consciousness is a basket. We got to say, based on our decisions, we kind of like, collect a certain range of, I guess, synchronized meaning. Anyways, it says reasoning. Human dignity is not only a concept, it is also something encountered and experienced. If your relationship to yourself is based on contempt, neglect, self betrayal, or self erasure, then your ability to genuinely honor humanity is weakened because the very thing you're supposed to protect is already being denied in your own case. Wow. Wow. It says, second core argument, the self is the first training ground of ethics. What a sentence. Before someone can contribute to justice, leadership, civilization, or moral progress, they must practice order within themselves. Self honor includes honesty, restraint, responsibility, and self respect. Reasoning. Ethics is not proven by what one says about the world, but by how one lives when no audience is present. If a person cannot govern impulses, face truth, or treat themselves responsibly, then their service to larger causes may be inconsistent and unreliable. The species is built out of selves. What a sentence. Yeah. A corrupted self becomes a corrupted building block. I can see that. Three, it says a damaged self often reproduces damage socially. People who do not honor themselves often externalize that disorder into relationship, institutions, and culture. Inner chaos spreads outward. Reasoning. Self-hatred can become envy. Shame can become domination. Inner emptiness can become addiction to status, power, ideology, or control. Someone who is not reconciled with themselves may try to manage their may try to manage their pain by harming others, manipulating systems, or chasing false superiority. In that sense, failure to honor oneself is not private, it becomes civilizational. Wow. This is kind of like pointing to the dangers of not honoring yourself. 4, the species is not an abstraction separate from the individual. Humanity is not out there apart from actual human beings. The species exists through individuals. Reasoning. To dishonor one human instance, especially oneself, is to dishonor one expression of the species. What a great way of talking about it. It's one human instance. Yes, I'm one instance of humanity. It says to dishonor one human instance, especially oneself, is to dishonor one expression of the species. You're not separate from humanity, you are one occurrence of it. Therefore, self neglect is not irrelevant to the species. It is one point where the species is either diminished or elevated. You know, guys, what this makes me consider? It makes me consider that when, imagine, I'm not a parent, but I'm imagining, if I had a child and that child hurt itself, that child might be under the impression that it is hurting just itself, but it is hurting a member of the human species. You see, it's such a profound view. In the same way, from a religious sense, where you're not just you are the creation of a creator. Similarly, the human experience is not just an individual's human. Like there will be, I guess, philosophical arguments on this as we go towards the future, on whether the value of being an individual is only valuable to the individual. That means if somebody hurts themselves, it has repercussions to everyone around them, for the species. That means, like, tell me what feeling you would have if you saw a bunch of aliens bullying a bunch of humans. You would be like, how dare they? Right? Similarly, if you bullied yourself, if you hurt yourself, do you ever think, how dare you? We're not conditioned to think like that, but we should. You know, it's like I've been dishonoring one human being. Or here, let me get to the synthesis here. Okay, 5. Self honor produces credibility. This is the 5th argument. A person who honors himself tends to embody coherence. Their words and actions align more closely. This makes their concern for humanity more trustworthy. Reasoning. People can sense when moral language is disconnected from being. A person who speaks of justice but lives in self betrayal often lacks force. A person who has disciplined themselves, a person who has disciplined themselves, faced themselves, and refused self degradation speaks with different weight. Their honoring of humanity feels real because it has already been enacted in the nearest possible place, the self. It's a very cool idea. It's saying, like, if you got to, it's like saying, like, we're not just us, we're the species. If we're doing something to us and we're just giving based on our personal values, it's like that doesn't do it justice. In some sense, it has a value for everyone. Like if one person presses a button on a nuclear bomb, it's not like just that person's issue anymore. Do you know what I'm saying? That means it's not they just dishonored themselves, or it's as if they dishonored the whole species. Because this process that we're experiencing, the human process, the human odyssey, it is just the fact of this world that things take longer to build up, and they can instantaneously break. It's easier to break, to the degree that in my youth I thought, like, what is it? Is it just that hardship is a metaphor for, like, the anti-human mod? Anyways, it says We go to 6. You cannot sustainably sacrifice for others if you're inwardly collapsing. Okay, this is a good argument. It says serving humanity requires endurance. People who do not honor themselves often burn out, become resentful, or turn noble causes into self destruction. Reasoning: without self respect, service becomes martyrdom. Wow. Without self respect, service becomes martyrdom, performance, or an attempt to earn worth. But service rooted in self honor is stronger because it comes from fullness, not desperation. A person who knows their own dignity can give without disappearing. Wow. You know how there's this view that in relationships, like when a person goes into a relationship or something of that sort, it's like a chunks of you are being sacrificed to adapt to the moment, and chunks of the other person are being sacrificed to adapt for the moment. It's like people change, right? Now it's saying, like this sentence where it says, a person who knows their own dignity can give without disappearing. Do you know? I guess it's, to me it's more like, okay, I've been thinking that I've been spending, let's say, my the individual time of my life for a collective expression. um I don't know how to say it. It's like anything you do, like its cost is you. Or if I want to do something new, the cost of it is the old view of myself. Anyways, and there is this saying that they say a hungry man will eat anything. So don't be that desperate in existence. But the desperation of the soul for the yearning of the original state, that's different. That's a different discussion. Desperation is enlightening in that context. Anyways, we go to 7. Self contempt makes people vulnerable to dehumanizing systems. Those who do not honor themselves are often easier to exploit, manipulate, or absorb into destructive ideologies. Reasoning: if you do not believe your own existence has worth, you're more likely to submit to systems that reduce human beings to numbers, tools, consumers, or weapons. Wow. Self honor acts as an inner defense against dehumanization. Wow. What a sentence. What a sentence. Oh my God. That means if you don't honor yourself, you're at the risk of dehumanizing. And those people who are stressed or depressed or in some dark place, right? You don't understand. You got to be very careful. Find something about the human value that you can honor. For me personally, I can see I'm not a perfect person, but I didn't, let's say I was someone who had low self worth when I was young. Now I can see values everywhere, but when I was young, I couldn't. I didn't have self worth. I didn't. Others had greater value than me. Pretty much everything, I think. It's like I missed the self worth memo, and I lived many years my attention not being on myself. You see, it's a privilege to be yourself. Hear it from a shy, introverted person. There's so many ways we access the moment and we convert the moments we access into value. Pretty much, it's like a physical engagement translates into a subjective value system. All right. There's way more for me to read, my God. We haven't even got into the counter arguments. So we go to stronger philosophical formulation. A more rigorous version of the statement would be, if a human being cannot recognize and preserve dignity, order, and truth within themselves, their claim to honor humanity as a whole remains incomplete, because the species is encountered first in the human self. There we go. Huge. This is huge. This is a very big point, guys. In other words, your first contact with the species is through yourself. Yourself, as I've said in other talks, like just like a gym membership card, you get access to the gym. When you look in the mirror, and from the moment you wake up, you have access to the human experience. Okay? You have access, you encounter the species. And what's fascinating is everybody is encountering a sort of private version of the species. See, if you identify as the self, things get weird. But if you are observing the self, it's as if you're like, wait a minute, it's a bunch of unknown forces or moments of force. Unknown, I like that, unknown moments of force. Okay, and this unknown moment of force has the privilege. Do you understand what it is? It's like our test is given to us, but it is not given to the us in form. So in other words, if a test is based on information and we've opened our eyes to a world filled with information, it's as if every soul on earth, imagine it's a testing zone, an exam hall, and every unknown soul, unknowable soul, this unknown force of a soul is given its exam. The content is you. That means if I haven't taken care, if I haven't served the humanity within myself, how can I serve the humanity outside? Like this makes a lot of sense. That means if I can't honor an individual, the first human being I know, I see, I have access to, if I cannot honor myself, I have not honored the first version of humanity I've accessed. This is huge, guys. I know this talk is, I'm not speaking in verse that much, but like the huge. Do you understand what it's like the research is saying? Let me keep reading it. It says main counter arguments. To think clearly, we should also include the objections. Counter argument one: people who hate themselves can still help humanity. Someone may have low self worth yet still do good work, defend others, or make great sacrifices. Yeah, like Da Vinci was a creep, but like he still did good work. We I don't know why I'm bringing Da Vinci into this. Like, response: this is true. A wounded person can still serve humanity, but the argument is not that self hating people are incapable of all good. It is that their service is often less stable, less integrated, and more vulnerable to collapse or contradiction. They can contribute, but they do so while internally divided. We go to the second counter argument. Focusing on self honor can become narcissism. Too much emphasis on self may lead to self obsession rather than service. Yeah, that's a good counter argument. That's what's happening actually. People, they are, see, the issue is, it's there's multiple variables, but we're convinced that we got to accept either this variable or the other. Duality has fooled us in regards to all the different ways there are to look at this realm. It says counter argument 2. Did I read this? No. It says focusing on self honor can become narcissism. Too much emphasis on, no, no, I read this. Too much emphasis on self may lead to obsession rather than service. Response, that depends on what is meant by self honor. Narcissism is not self honor. Narcissism is inflation, vanity, and fragile ego expansion. Self honor is sober recognition of one's dignity and responsibility. It is not in quotations, I am above others. It is in quotations, I must not degrade what I am because I too belong to humanity. This is the sentence I think I wept for. Like that's the feeling. In certain areas of my life, I have not put as much attention as, let's say, this area of life. But what can one do? The moment goes forth. Counter argument 3. Some people learn dignity through serving others first. A person may discover self worth by caring for others before they know how to care for themselves. Response, also true. Development is not always linear. Sometimes service awakens self honor. But even there, the deeper point remains. For that service to mature fully, the person eventually must include themselves within the circle of dignity. My God, do you understand what this means? I think it's telling me what I've been doing wrong, like this AI research that I'm reading for you. It's pretty much, it's pretty much telling me like, I guess this is why I intuitively felt like changing it to my name. I have to include myself within the circle of dignity I've created. That means if Amin Jabir Ansari has honored the Mr. Within archetype, when will the Mr. Within archetype honor Amin Jabir Ansari, or is it after his lifetime, or is it during his lifetime, or is it about to happen? Who knows? Technically, I have two names to myself. Like first name, the names I was given, first name and last name. Second name is this new archetype that was different from anything around me. That means the cool thing about giving 10,000 talks is that at some point you realize you're the only one doing it. And of course, there's different circumstances, different conditions. And of course, like there's so many people who've given lectures and talks in history. Okay, now we go to the deeper reasoning and the core synthesis. And now I'll conclude the research component. So, deeper reasoning in one chain. The full reasoning can be stated simply like this: you are one instance of humanity. How you treat yourself is one way humanity is being treated. If you degrade yourself, neglect yourself, or betray yourself, then one living expression of the species is already being dishonored. If you instead cultivate truth, dignity, discipline, and care within yourself, then humanity is being honored in immediate form. From there, your concern for others becomes more real, more stable, more credible. Therefore, self honor is not separate from species honor, it is its first embodiment. Then we go to concise synthesis. When a person cannot honor themselves, their ability to honor the species becomes fragile because the species is first encountered in the human self. To honor oneself is not vanity, but the disciplined recognition of one's own dignity, responsibility, and moral worth. A person who lives in self betrayal, self neglect, or inner contempt may still speak about humanity, but the relationship to human value remains divided at its source, since each individual is a living expression of the species. The treatment of the self is already one instance of how humanity is being treated. Exactly. For this reason, self honor is not separate from honoring the species. It is the first place where that honor becomes real. Wow. All right, let me copy paste this in the video description. Guys, this was huge. Huge. I started the lecture broken, and now I've been fixed. I'm just editing the video description. Hold on, folks. Hold on, patient. All right, description updated. Okay, so I let me let me explain the new plateau we have come to. I started off at first being like, man, I've spent a lot of time on this project. I haven't spent a lot of time on myself. Um, is that the wrong approach? Now we looked at it. There were counter arguments. There were arguments, and there was one point that really stood out. Okay, which is the responsibility of an advanced human being. It like to me that's what's been updated. That means to be an advanced human being and to be an advanced member of the human species, you require to realize you are first contacting the species and everything through yourself. So yourself is like the first version, first experience of witnessing a species, witnessing a world, witnessing a body, witnessing, the stream of mind, witnessing, do you know? So in other words, this life has been designed for us to contact these greater programs through the smaller program of ourself. And ourself is also adaptable, which is another way of saying you can change your settings. Like, you can't take certain animals out of their territory, it'll disturb them. But the human being could shift territory without being disturbed. We could change environment and we weren't attached to the environment. And there was a force within us that would defined with the potential of reality rather than what was just in front of it. In other words, the human experience is you're like accessing a world through yourself, and you're also accessing an inner world. Or let me say it this way: you're first accessing you start off in your inner realms, you climb out of it, and you discover the outer realms, and then you consciously enter the inner realms. The issue is not that people don't know how to use their minds. People are conditioned with the wrong views on what the mind is, what reality is. All of these honor and everything are the actions of a conditional being. That means I'm living in an individual condition. I am, in some sense, accessing greater conditions. Okay, but just this fact that before we can truly honor our species, right? The first instance of the species we're getting access to is ourself. Now, what does honoring the self mean? Could we even open up the argument that there is conditional honor and there's unconditional honor? Or there's certain conditions that beings are honored, and the moment they step out of those conditions, they're dishonorable. It's like you do the right thing, everybody claps. You do the wrong thing, everybody shouts, scolds. So what does this mean? This means that human civilization has turned itself into a specific language. Anyways, So I guess if this is how I'm handling my moment. Something, this sentence, if you don't honor yourself, if you can't honor, like when you don't honor yourself, how can you honor the species? Honor is very important. Honor is equivalent to living for the greatest value, or staying true to an original value, or abiding by principle. Now, let's say a person's like, all right, if I'm the first instance of humanity, and if I serve myself, I'm technically serving the species. Like, maybe that's a flaw in the argument. Think of it this way: serving the species can be defined as how you treat the human species. Because you're a member of the human species, how you treat yourself is also how you treat the species. I keep saying we need to have species level responsibility, species level awareness, and species level identity. To have a species level identity, the person, in some sense, must. Do you know what it is? I'm imagining, if I was the most advanced version of me, how would I treat myself? Or if everybody was the most advanced version of themselves, how would I treat them then? And it seems to be that's a healthier approach. I have been seeing everybody advance, but because my experience of myself is first person perspective, yes, how's it being? And within this unknown moment, I find so much, like all the different elements and all the different content. Okay, I'm going to say that again and disconnected for a second. So if I'm this unknown moment of being, and everything I know or I'm identifying is the relationship of all the content, separate, all the different content in my moment. So it's like I'm this unknown system. Within me, I have these elements. One of these elements is my body. One of these elements is my thoughts. One of these elements is like you guys or everything out in the realm. Okay. I'm identifying and basing my honor on a previous condition that I've met. So the question can become deeper: how can we honor that which we haven't experienced yet? And should we honor that which we haven't experienced? And the answer is yes. We honor elders in our society, but we haven't gotten, like, we're not elders. The youth honor ancient ideas, ancient patterns, and like everything in life is older than you know uh, that which is engaging it in that moment. It's as if, like, how can I honor the whole species? So this is really really cool. This is like part of civilizational studies, okay, which I have playfully taken the archetype of being a professor in. People are going to be like, all right, man, you've paid attention to this topic. To me, context is very important. And even having read all this, like, I don't know, like, I think about a personal victory and I think about a collective victory. And all of us, I think, don't put effort in the personal victory unless we're certain it's a collective victory. Obviously, in life, we have to serve values that are greater than us. What is life? Like, you can't just serve yourself, you're an equivalent value to yourself. You must serve that which is greater than yourself. So, most people serve their future self. That's why they go to work. They're preparing. It's like, how do you become responsible of the past? You have to become conscious of the past and the present. How do you become responsible of the present? You got to handle the present as if you're handling the future. So think of it this way: this pattern is there, and it's there in ancient cultures as well, right? Pretty much the idea, I'll say it again, is so important. The idea is, if you want to manage your past, if you want to be responsible for your past, or let me say it this way: if you want to manage your past, you got to be your past self, your past selves, your past. You got to be responsible for your present. Okay. And after the age 18, we're like, okay, prefrontal cortex fully developed, the person can be responsible for their present. Now, here's the thing: I think many people, like, it takes a while for them to realize that to be able to manage the present, you must be responsible for the future. Now, here's where it gets metaphysical and theological. In order to manage the future of the whole lifetime, you must be responsible for the afterlife. In Islamic theology, there's a very important idea, okay? That it's like, if you're Muslim, this is communicated to you, okay? And what it is, that if you live for this world, okay, it's like you're one step behind. If you live for the next world, your God puts your affairs in order. That means the system admin, in some sense, for those beings that prioritize where everything is returning to, which is back to the original state. It's pretty much like, if you have an awareness to the original state of being, the simulated states of being are automated. In other words, if you put, it's like in Islam, all Muslims, and I think in major religions it's like this, you are not allowed, it's haram, okay, to fear anything other than the system admin, other than God. Why? Because everything is the command of this absolute being. You see, when you look at the design of this, God is an absolute being, meaning that conditions adapt to it. Conditions are defined by it. God is the original, unconditional, causal position of being. And we, as beings that are manifest here, are in a simulated effect conditional state. We have to adapt to this world that was imagined beyond our understanding, that was formulated, positioned beyond. We are experiencing a game that we are not moving all the pieces in. One clue. Second clue, we did not create the game. So we are attending, and as an experience, unknown experiencer, an existence that can be known in certain ways. This doesn't mean the certain ways we know existence are the absolute confines of our experiential reality. This is a very deep concept. I got to talk about honor for an unknown being in the future. But anyways, let me tell you what I saw, how this lecture opened the eyes of the speaker. I now understand that I cannot treat myself personally anymore. And it's a very cool idea, and it's a very refreshing feeling. I have been thinking that I can do whatever in this life because I am experiencing it only. Do you know that means if I get angry or if I get upset, it's like that to me is okay. Why? Because it's just happening for me. Like, that's how we're conditioned to consider it. But it is not accurate. What we experience as ourself is our first access point to an instance of the human game. This is huge. You know, I think this is the case. Every moment of life is a response to the condition of that moment. That condition of that moment formulates a self. Self is another way of saying conditions organized. It's like you put a condition of a moment. You put a whole. It's like we're this intelligence that is containing moments as senses of self. We're converting the whole moment into a sense of self by being this energy that responds to what it sees. So we can say that human identity is what an unknown force does to contain the moment in a known way. So every sense of self is actually an instance of the world, where it's not just yourself, it's an instance of the world. That means we've been thinking our experience is individual. That's what oh my God, that's what's been hidden. That it's a collective experience. You think that right now you're just some person on a world, on a planet. No, you are the species literally, because your senses of self you are the world literally, because your sense of self is like a 360 spherical camera capture of the whole moment as a self. You understand? It's like, just like cameras record like footage, we film something and it converts it into, like, a file. Similarly, we are converting our um camera operations of the world, and we are converting it into senses of self. Therefore, there is no such thing as the self. The self is is just a moment held. In other words, the brain, my God, the brain is not thinking like I'm this self, that self. It's a superior, greater dimensional, like, presence, intelligence that is converting. We are converters. We are converting existential nouns into subjective experiential verbs. And, like, it could be even deeper than that, but I'm saying, like, guys, what is this self? What is a self? Like, I'm getting goosebumps right now. I've been treating the self like, yo, man, I'm going to be this kind of self, give this kind of talk of the self. What is that? It's as if I am saying one of the perhaps bizarre and most impressive things a human consciousness can say. The unknown was the room before there was anything known in a room. Guys, it's an unknown event. It's an unknown process. Our human experience is a containment of it. It's a positioning of it. I can see it. Do you understand? Like, how do I explain it to you? You are not a self. Because if you okay, here, I'll prove this. Imagine like a memory in your childhood, like when you were 10 years old. Imagine like one sense of self when you were 10 years old, like, you were standing in a room or somewhere, standing outside, whatever. Imagine that. That memory doesn't just give you access to just a sense of self. You remember the moment. Memories are moments, correct? Are conscious moments, limited moments due to the ability of the consciousness. The fact that they have managed to convince all of us that we ourselves deserves a round of applause. Guys, I have the soul of a designer, and when it comes to designer, ethics is different. It's not before right and wrong. There's a genius of design. There's a genius of strategy. I don't know how to tell you. Sometimes I've seen evil people implement strategies that I'm like, okay, strip away the evil, genius strategy. You know, and then the whole point of strategy is to get to the outcome, get to the vision. You have this vision. They say strategy is how you win the war. Tactics is how you win every battle. And so the self is the tactics, okay? And the lifetime, the whole life, the moment is like, how do I say it? It's a strategy, tactic, ordeal. We envision something, and then we find the tactics to go about it, to go towards that vision. I am telling you, in this lecture, I have realized that I am so spot on when I say we're unknown selves in an unknown world and it's a storytelling operation. I am so spot on because it is more unknown than the self. The self is what is found, just like you open a fruit and you find something in it. Do you know what I mean? Like, let's say you cut an apple, in the same way, or you cut an apricot, like you see, or an avocado, anything, like any fruit, like you cut it, you see the inner reality is different than the whole reality. So it could be like there is no one world, guys. There is a surface, there's inner, outer. It's spheres. The world is like concentric spheres. The moment you snap out of, the moment you pull aside and pierce one veil, you realize you're inside a realm that's veiled in a greater way. And the intent was this. In the same way, like I'm intending to give this talk and I'm giving it, in the same way, there was an intention for existence to look like this. And it is not human intention. In other words, what it means to be a human being is not to be the ultimate ascriber of meaning to phenomena. It is the hard truth, the hardest truth, perhaps species either notice or don't notice. Like, and you were like some young kid, you'd pick up a stick, go to the forest, and try to hit all the trees as quickly as possible. Do you know what I mean? Or you would practice one, like, technique over and over and over again, and eventually you would have so many experiences of it that it would not be something you would think about anymore. It would be natural. Like, you don't think about jumping in the air or walking. It's you've mastered those. You don't think about eating. You don't think about, like self-care. All of these are things that have been repeated so many times that they don't connect to the frontiers of the conscious identity anymore. So in the same way, imagine we are experiencing human life to the degree that in the future we won't identify as humans. We will identify as a species having an individual human experience. That's the shift. We're experiencing this side of the coin. Individual first, then collective. The other side of the coin is collective value, then individual noticing. In other words, we are legit a translation of the world. If somebody takes a photograph of me, the photograph is true and false. It is true, it's a photograph of me. It is false. I am not that photograph. In the same way, it is true we take an instance of the experience of humanity, which is ourself, and it's like a photograph. And it is true we are representing, reflecting the species. But are we the whole species? Do we have the experience of the whole species? We don't. What is the value of individual life? When you look at it, when you look at all individuals in reality,
on the food. Why are you putting on your feet on the food? Sit in your car seat. Are you there? I have food over there. You don't. Why do they have so many things inside? We go to dinner machine. You don't understand.
all right, guys. There was noise from outside. Um, I'm pretty much saying in 2026, we're experiencing ourselves as individual human beings, serving our individual limited purposes that are in the range of our awareness. But what we're not realizing is we're actually these unknown moments that are converting the whole moment into a subjective individual position to identify with that and take the moment further. It's all about novelty ultimately. Do you know in some sense, people are not just attracted to what they already know, they are attracted to what they don't know, what they have never known, what they have never seen. Do you understand? It's like the unknown. If I gave you two doors and I'm like, in one door you'll see something you've seen before, and the other door you'll see something you've never seen before. You are pulled towards the unknown. Why? Because there is the possibility of different ways the moment can happen. The individual human experience is a test. It is not just a divine theological test. It is also the test for a species to remember itself. From one angle, you're humans connecting and joining, and yay, we're advanced humanity. From another angle, you are the advanced potential of a species activating and occurring through you. That means people are like, yo, Mr. Within, do I need to go and, become some next level engineer to help advance civilization? And I'm like, you don't understand. You are serving civilization the moment you are conscious of a human. Right now, we define humanity as original, natural, biological humans. This is going to be up to the phase where we unite as a species. And once we're fully responsible for mankind, the next task will be to be responsible for Earthkind. Once we're fully responsible for Earthkind, it is going to stretch to the universal responsibility, celestial responsibility. Today, people like an astrophysicist comes online and explains a black hole, and people are like, whoa, cool. But in the future, the position of conscious engagement is going to be in question. That means there's going to be androids in the future. What about them? There's going to be androids that are going to be indistinguishable from humans. What about them? Like advanced AI androids. What about clone? What about animals that have advanced AI connected to them? So they can acknowledge human, like they have they have prefrontal cortex capability. And all of them can identify with a human. Even what if an actual alien immigration, diplomatic aliens came and lived on Earth, and they managed to shapeshift into a human, and the guy's like, I'm alien, but like, it's like I was born on an alien planet, but I've been living as a human being for 50 years. Do you know what I mean? It's like at that point we would have to grant those archetypes human citizenship, but it would be a different class, not out of class distinction, not because we're separate, but just to honor the organizational differences between beings. Do you know? That means, like, if there are, how do I say it, there is racism on this planet, and I found it so freaking hilarious. One of the funniest and most hilarious things about racism, the dude doesn't care about the other person's hair color, hairstyle, doesn't care about their clothing, doesn't care about the fact that everybody's blood is red and bone is white, and how if we really wanted to measure the color of a person, we'd be red if we're 70% liquid. You know what I mean? So I'm saying, like the person is is ignoring everything else, just zooming in on one factor, do you know that just because the person doesn't have a different color of skin. But nowadays it's not just that, it's also access to the cultural program. If you don't have access to a cultural program, most average human beings, and I don't want to call them sheep, but most sheep are designed to, in some sense, like, not want a black sheep in the herd. Do you know what I mean? But it's so funny that our decisions really define who we are, not what we look like. Do you know? That means in a temporary world, everybody's gonna die. You're telling me beings are fighting over what they look like? That's the dumbest thing. It's like, yo, man, we've been changing. Everything's been changing. It's a changing world. But just because you don't look like me, I'm gonna treat you differently. What is that? And of course, it's not that it's wrong. Like, see, let me say it this way. Honoring, it's as if somebody came up to you and said, yo, man, world peace means converting every book in the library into one giant book. That's wrong. That's not world peace. That's not the advanced position. Anyways, guys, I have probably energy in me to give like one more hour of a talk. I'm going to talk here and start a new title. But the main point of what I was sharing here for you to take away is this. Pretty much, if you're someone confronted by a question like this, if you feel you have sacrificed yourself for something, or whatever way you've lived, there's 8.1 billion humans, so many different ways currently people are living. It's to realize that as you become conscious collectively, it means collective responsibility. You've lived an individual life. Let's say you succeed in your individual life. The responsibility extends beyond yourself. You start a family, the responsibility extends beyond your family. You care for your community. The responsibility extends beyond the community. You care for your nation. Now, this is where we are, where the responsibility extends beyond the nation and you care for the species. A species identified by what it is rather than where it is. We honor the human experience. It doesn't matter. If you have to dishonor yourself to honor, like, like if there is a moment you can see that dishonoring yourself allows the whole species to find honor, and you can you reclaim your honor later on, then that's fine, I think. I could have lived way more as a physical being than a mental being, but it's fine. I could still go live as a physical being. I could just imagine they're like, what happened to Mr. Within? He became like, he just got tired of everything and simplified everything, and now he's just, you know, living like a hedonist, a hedonist atheist. Nah, guys, nah. if I descend there, then there's something to talk about, I guess. Anyways, thank you for listening. There is a higher power in this realm, beyond this world room. We're all in a world room. We need to understand that we're not just experiencing ourselves when we wake up in the morning, we're experiencing an instance of humanity, of the species, of the life of the species. You're not just living your own life. You're a member of the human species. If you were born as an alien, I wouldn't care, but you're born as a member of the human species, and it's some things are just they're just silently known that we must serve the greatness of everything that can keep getting greater. Do you know what this means? That means there's an advanced potential within every moment. You know, Michelangelo, I saw the angel in the stone and I set it free. He saw the potential in reality and he activated it. Do you know? And what we're doing is not just for ourselves, it is for our species. And once we live for our species, we will truly comprehend that it is for the world, and the world is administered by a higher order process. So I do believe it all comes down to the system admin. All simulated states come down to the original state. But what is our duty as members of the human species? To honor, seek, and act, honor, find, and activate the most advanced states of human expression. That means if there's entropy, epistemic entropy, say cosmic entropy, universal entropy, then it means the performance will end. And it's the quality of our performance. And a true performance is getting dissolved into the moment. In other words, to truly be present from this state to all that is present. In other words, to live for the honor of the whole system and to realize you have been living as the whole system. That's the collective unconscious, that's the subconscious. These are greater ways that the moment processes itself, converts itself into a moment of meaning. Anyways, thank you for listening. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful, and the most advanced. And let us not forget that we are not just living our own life. We are accessing the first instance to the life of the species. That means every person is being tested on how do you treat the human species. If you treat yourself like trash, you're treating the human species like trash, technically. So that's important. Anyways, all of this means I've been neglecting certain things I need to go take care of. Anyways, thank you for listening. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, all praise due to the Lord of the worlds. And all simulated conditional states return to the original unconditional state. The room was the effect of an unconditional cause, the conditional room. Anyways, have a great day. Thank you.